Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. So the recap of stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia, one that will live long in the history books. The brutal Finestre approaching the riders, the hardest climb of the race. This episode brought to you by Bicycle. Word on them in a second. But the stage, 205 kilometers, very, very long, rolling terrain before the Finestre. It's still up and down. It's not completely flat. And then we have one categorized climb, the Colle, Delle, which is not that hard. And then the Finestre, 18.5 Ks, 9.2% up to 2,150 meters. It's the spectra that's been hanging over the race. The last 8 Ks is gravel. It crests with about 28 kilometers to go before a very technical narrow descent. And then the big highway up to Sestriere, a more gradual climb, not the very hard Jungfrau, I think it was called, finish that Froome maybe had in 2018. So
Jungfrau.
Jungfrau. Yeah, I just made it up. I was like, Jungfrau? I think that just means young woman.
In Dutch, yeah.
Just making up words.
Close enough.
Before the stage, to remind you of the GC standings, Isaac Del Toro, since the Siena gravel stage, has been in the Maglia Rosa, defending it and even extending his GC lead on a number of riders. 43 seconds ahead of Richard Carapaz, who's been the best climber in the race, at least results-wise, up until this moment. Dropping Simon Yates on short climbs, dropping Del Toro on the long climb on stage 16, and everybody, frankly. And Simon Yates was on 1:21 in third, so he was 40 seconds more or less behind Carapaz, who was 40 seconds more or less behind Del Toro. And UAE looks strong throughout the whole race. They've got McNulty, Micah. I know they've lost Vine and Ayuso, but they still had the biggest depth of climbing talent left in the race. What were your keys for today, Benji? To borrow this like an NFL thing, what were your before the stage? What were your keys to the game?
First of all, I have no clue what keys mean, but I'll just play it my way. I expected break formation to be important. In break formation, multiple teams, GC-wise, would like to get a rider ahead, would like that breakaway to have enough of a gap for riders to make it over Colle del Finestre. That counts for EF, was my first team that came to mind for an attacking move of Carapaz. UAE maybe as offensive satellite riders. Visma as attacking satellite riders. But basically, any GC team would want someone up the road because it's actually quite helpful. If they can get over Colle del Finestre, the pathway after Finestre towards Sestriere is the perfect gradient for a satellite rider to be useful. So that's one thing. But the gap for the breakaway needs to be huge because Colle del Finestre is such an inherently difficult climb that you need like 10 minutes at the foot for this to work. We were speculating during the stage, how much does the break need to make certain riders get to the top, etc. Some people said 12 minutes, 15 minutes. I was thinking 8 to 10 minutes maybe for certain riders, and we'll get to which riders get in the breakaway here because throughout break formation, I was kind of surprised by, first of all, UAE not necessarily hardcore controlling, but as a consequence of that, I was surprised by the fact that I didn't see that much activity from the likes of EF, or was I blind?
Yeah, it was really, the whole break formation today, honestly, was the most shocking part of the stage to me because Sestriere, you need draft, and you know, like, if you're Carapaz or Yates or Del Toro, you don't want to be the guy chasing the guy ahead of you. So, like, let's imagine a scenario. Yates is up the road or Carapaz is up the road and Del Toro's chasing. He doesn't. He risks the other attacking him on Sestriere if he's pulling for 15 kilometers all out chasing, and vice versa. And then for Carapaz and Yates, if they want to win the race, Benji, they need a unit ahead because they're small boys. And Del Toro's a truck. Like, Del Toro's a lot bigger than them. He's a lot more powerful. We've seen that all race. Like in Strada on rolling terrain, he was unstoppable. And I was really shocked that neither of EF or UAE got in the break. And McNulty, as I said, McNulty couldn't. McNulty's the perfect guy because he can climb. He'll get over in the breakaway Finestre with the best 5. And he's 68, 70 kilos. He can pull a valley super fast. But he's too close on GC.
Also, it just doesn't happen from any riders of UAE either. We get a breakaway of 31 riders without UAE riders, without EF riders, with a single rider from Visma Leasebike, pretty solid rider though, Wout van Aert, you might have heard of him, Outside of those teams, we've got potentially Hajduk as a satellite rider for Ineos, Bilbao and Milhojevic for Caruso, so for Bahrain Victorious. Then a bunch of other riders from other teams, including Hermans Janssens Kielik for Alpecin and so forth, the Bond Vendrami for Decathlon AG2R, Monique, Alessandro Vere, pretty solid Italian young climber from Arkea. 4 riders from Groupama that Rocha was on the screen for a couple of minutes, so I shouldn't criticize them too much on this stage. Husato Collioni for Intermarché, Simon Clark for IPT, so potential satellite rider for Derek G up the road, Barenecha and Cepeda for Rubio, also a possibility. Mosca Pedersen Verona, that's different. They don't have a GC rider. They're trying to win the stage here, and they're actually going to be important at the start of Colle del Finestre in the breakaway. Milan Vader, forgot he existed. He's here for QD 36.5. Got a fully Ethan Hayter for Quickstep. Harper, who has been solid quite a bit in the last week for the team of Jayco. Hamilton for Picnic. Maestri, who's better than his status as a pro team rider perceives. That is a rider for Polti, and 2 more riders for Bargnani, Marcellucci and Tarozzi. Long lists. I probably should have mentioned 75% of them instead of the whole list, but at the end of the day, the most important riders in that breakaway are Van Aert for Visma Leasebike and Little Trek as the stage progresses, and potentially a Harper and Vere for a stage win, because they seemingly were potentially the strongest on the climb. We'll get to that later. But now, this break has formed. 31 riders are up the road. What happens now? Because if you look at the priorities of the people in the peloton, if you're UAE, goal number 1 is making sure any satellite riders in the breakaway don't make it over the top of Colle del Finestre in front of the GC riders. If you're EF Education First, you missed being in that breakaway in the first place. But Van Aert is technically also a danger for Carapaz in that sense, because he might help Yates beat Carapaz.
I had no idea what EF were doing.
Okay.
So Carapaz has got to attack Del Toro, right?
Yes.
This stage before Finestre is not hard. You're not going to actually fatigue Del Toro on these roads, even if you pull hard. It's not good. It's not ideal that Van Aert's in the break for Carapaz defending his second place. But if you want to win, isn't the idea that you keep domestiques that can then do a lead out as many as possible on Finestre to take Carapaz as deep as possible into the climb, and then Yates will probably attack you, go with him or work with him, and then maybe Van Aert, Yates doesn't drop you, and Van Aert is kind of forced to pull, and he pulls you to victory, was what I was thinking.
I agree with you to an extent. I don't believe Asgreen would have been the most valuable rider for Finestre, so I don't mind them using Asgreen before Finestre. On top of that, I do think there is maybe value in pushing a little bit on the Colle del Lis, that middle climb in the stage, to put a little bit more fatigue in. Outside of that, on the flat, I don't necessarily see that value just like you. So I agree with you to an extent, but UAE was toying with them. EF started pacing on that middle climb in the stage, gradual climb, but they do the thing that we've joked about this a couple of times. We've seen this very rarely in the sport of cycling. EF is pacing at the front of the peloton. UAE is sitting as the second team in the group, but UAE has no reason to follow EF's harder pace on the climb. So what do they say? Okay, just ride off to the 3 EF domestiques at the front. And there's this brilliant genius work at play here where UAE is just kind of like seeing the EF riders right away, and the EF riders slowly realizing, oh shit, we just lost the peloton. Why do teams not do this more often?
I agree. They should have to put Carapaz in third wheel and eat that wind. And teams should do it more to UAE, because UAE have Pogacar sit 20th wheel in a draft bubble, and then they pace with Pollitt, and then everyone follows them. I'm like, let them go. Let their wheel go. But yeah, but to me, Benji, UAE, I don't why don't you spend Baroncini and Arrieta to keep this break tighter? Why when EF came, did they not keep helping them?
I agree.
Like,
sorry, I have no counterpoint here. I can't invent.
Like, isn't a doomsday scenario like Van Aert being ahead with Carapaz and or Yates and Del Toro being isolated?
Yes, and at the end of the day, if Van Aert reaches the foot of Colle del Finestre with 6 minutes, then he's never making it over the top in front of Simon Yates. So he cannot be useful as a satellite rider. So while pacing the peloton before Colle del Finestre, you are basically lowering the gap the break will have by that climb, in doing so, dooming the satellite riders that are in that breakaway, making them useless. And that's not really what UAE is doing here. EF is maybe seeing that as a reason for their pacing. It's a potential. But at the end of their day, you also know that if you get over the climb, the breakaway is going to start smashing. And we spoke about the riders in it. Why is Pedersen there? He's not there to pace the whole climb for Carlos Verona. He's there to smash the flat and the first segments of the climb. You know that. You know that with multiple riders in this group where there's 3 riders per team sometimes. They've got tug buddies that will keep this break going and will try to expand the gap of this breakaway as much as possible by the foot of that Colle del Finestre. But while you point at UAE there, I also just think it was a mistake in the first place to not have a satellite rider up the road. I know we hammered it already earlier, but I think it's such a vital thing where satellite riders don't need to be offensive. Satellite riders can be defensive, and UAE did not have that today. But we spoke about EF. They nearly crash out in the descent then. There's like this corner to the right, their entire team in the pros. I'm pretty sure Patrick just spilled his entire drink over his keyboard at the moment, so he might not be able to type for the rest of his life. But
doesn't matter. I can speak.
That being said, the EF train basically, one of them misses the corner. In doing so, luckily, there's a runoff for that corner. Because without that runoff, every EF rider followed each other, so they might have all like literally fallen into a ravine there if that was not there.
This changed the entire stage, this domino, because EF had the break under control. It went down to 7:30, and Benji, your quick maths were like 6 minutes. Van Aert's not making it. Everyone knows that. 8 minutes?
Maybe.
Probably not.
I didn't think so. For me, it was
I also didn't think so. I thought EF, and then say they bring it down to 7, he's not making it. And then it goes to EF are fucked because they're all like jumbled up. It's a long descent. Asgren, I think, was on the front. He has to kind of wait. He slow pedals. And it's at that very moment, you can see this is the Belgian, all these Belgian Flemish directors in the race cars. This is what they do. They wait. There was a Tour de France breakaway with Bettiol where they did this. And it's after the descent when there's like a 15K valley before the group behind gets organized, and they were going to do it anyway, but the rouleurs absolutely smash it. The breakaway is literally like a full-on like TTT chain gang, and the gap goes to 10 minutes so fast again.
It does, and it's 10 minutes by the foot of Colle del Finestre. But one small thing though, Wout van Aert sprinting with Dries de Bond at the intermediate sprint before Colle del Finestre, I was like, wow, that's not necessary. Let de Bond have his Inter-Giro points. Like,
bro, that was crazy.
You need to save your energy. I want you to make it to the top of Colle del Finestre if you're going to be useful here.
I was like, what do you do? I mean, Van Aert, he knows, credit to him. Like, he knows every minor prize from the road book. If there's some kitchen renovation he can win by sprinting someone, or if Niels Eckhoff is trying to get some pocket money, Van Aert doesn't allow it. So he's ruthless in that aspect. But before we get to the Colle del Finestre, where the action was all going to kick off, a word on our advertiser today, Bicycle. You can save 20% on seller protection when you list your bike through us on Bicycle. If you've got a bike you're not riding anymore, maybe you got a gravel bike. Maybe you thought you liked gravel a lot, and it's just not for you. Maybe you like gravel too much, and now being a crit dog is not for you anymore. And you've got 17 different bikes. Listing and selling on Bicycle is easy. It takes less than 2 minutes. They've got templates for most major brands. They'll even help you price your bike with smart recommendations. Then they send you the packaging, provide the shipping label, and pick the bike up from your doorstep. It's completely hassle-free. I mean, I wish selling anything in life was this straightforward and convenient, and listing is always free. You only pay a small seller protection fee when your bike sells, and we've got that discount for you. So make sure to go to bicycle.com/LRCP20. That's BUYCYCLE.com. Bicycle.com/LRCP20. Clicking that link is the only way to get 20% off seller protection, and it helps support the podcast. Okay, Finestre, Benji, what's the gap? What's the situation? What were you expecting to happen?
So the gap is 10 minutes. We start Colle del Finestre with the breakaway up front, and Mess Pedersen is hard pacing. Mess Pedersen is hard pacing because he knows that Carlos Verona has looked amazing in the last 2 weeks of this race. Has won a stage already. The one downside is, we discussed this yesterday, Carlos Verona is not a 58 kilo climber. This is a steep climb, a long steep climb. Verona might not be the strongest rider in this breakaway because of that, because gravity matters in cycling. It's not the all-defining factor, but on a climb like this, it's impactful. So we quickly see the consequences of that Mats Pedersen pace being instantly 20 riders drop from that breakaway. There's like 11 riders left, including Bilbao being dropped quite early as well. Wout van Aert losing the gap quite quickly as well. Maybe they're doing their own tempo to get to the top at their own tempo. That's a possibility. They don't want to go into the red following this Pedersen tempo, because one guy was going in the red. Carlos Verona was going in the red. Pedersen was dropping his leader for the stage. Carlos Verona, by how explosive he started this climb. And then we see Pedersen going back to Verona, taking his beat on, putting some water on him. I was like, Pedersen, I think it's done. I think you've ruined Verona, which, hey, that happens, I guess, in cycling. You can't imagine what will happen 5 minutes later on a climb like Colle del Finestre. But I want to talk about the breakaway a little bit more before we jump to the GC group. Harper and Very are the strongest riders in this group, basically, based on what I see.
They go away.
Duo fairly quickly on this climb.
Remy Rochas launches them. So
Okay.
credits to let me shout my boy out first.
Got to advocate for the small boys club. Remy Rocha.
Because Louis Manches didn't make the break, which was a shame for all intended. But yeah, Remy Rochas was the only one holding down the fort. Maybe Ver, I'm not sure. I need to measure his height. But yeah, Remy Rochas was holding it down for us.
What is the height at which riders are accepted in the community group?
My height's the maximum height.
What is your height?
1 meter 85.
That is not fucking true. You're 1.61 at max.
At max, dude. 1 meter bike too. So wingspan of 1 meter. But yeah, Harper. It's all about Harper and Ver. Credits to Ver. You know, it's just an impressive performance from him. You know, it kind of makes you think, like, where was he on the other high mountain stages? Maybe he just didn't make the breakaway there. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, he was really, and Arkea actually, like, they had the plan for him today. But you're right, Benji. Pedersen paced way too hard. You could actually see, yeah, it just reduced the group way too fast. It's a 1 hour climb. In the first K, you don't need it to be 5 guys.
Yeah,
like,
that is true.
It's too aggressive.
It is too aggressive, but having it initially split can help a little bit. The problem was that Verona was off the back in the split. But we got to talk about the peloton. That's where the action is happening on this Colle del Finestre. I'm sorry for the breakaway, but we're going to be mostly talking about GC here, because this is one of the craziest climbs I've seen in my entire life of watching cycling. And that is because of what happens at the start. We see the run in towards the climb, sprint for positioning, all the teams lined up in the wide road running towards Colle del Finestre. EF Education first hits the front with a single rider. Then there's a bit of a gap towards the other riders. Immediately when the climb starts, Darren Rafferty takes over. And what are we talking about? Eye test tempo. How was it?
Rafferty was smashing. I was like, EF has got the order maybe even wrong, but it had UAE in all sorts. Del Toro was not on Carapaz's wheel. Simon Yates entered that climb in Narnia. And I was thinking, when the climb started, I was like, look at these idiots. Look at these idiots fighting for position, doing a sprint at the bottom of a 1 hour climb. You know why? You can move up easily. You don't need to fight for position like it's a 700 meter kicker in the north of France. But then EF made it a problem. EF then kept the pace so high, you could not move up at all. So EF actually did ambush everybody. This is where I was saying, though, Benji, Steinhausen and Asgren, I would rather use them here.
Asgren, I don't think he would be useful here.
Still, he can do 500, he can do the lead-in, and he can do 500 meters.
Can I be honest? I don't want to complain about what I saw here from EF at this point. We got to get further into the climb before we can start talking.
I mean, Rafferty's been good all race. He got in the break the other day. He's really good.
Because what EF does here is completely shattering the peloton in the first 5 minutes of this climb. I have not seen something like this in a very long time, in my personal opinion. I see EF shredding it after Rafferty, the next rider starts, but in the next 2 riders of their relay, it starts falling apart everywhere in the group. It's suddenly a group of 20 riders, 25 riders maybe, but EF is also falling apart. Some of their domestiques can't actually do their work. UAE, we see multiple riders of their team falling through the group as well. We saw at a certain point, I swear it's like 2 kilometers into this climb, we see, who was the last? Was it Cepeda, the last rider for Carapaz?
Yeah, but he'd never even pulled. He just let the gap go because I don't know. No, it was somewhat Honoré maybe? Sure?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It happened so fast. It
I
happened
was
too
like,
fast.
I was like, this is like a murder wheel lead out or something. It was crazy. I was
A
like,
murder
what?
lead out.
I was
The
like,
climb's
what?
20k.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? This is Grinta. And it was, and when that happened as well, you knew straight away, this is going to be an extraordinary finish because they're going so apeshit from the bottom. And also, Yates sliding. Adam, that is. Adam Yates is sliding. Yeah. Micah's not there to respond. Arrieta's gone. So, like, what UAE would have been wanting to do would be like, Arrieta, well, they don't need to do anything. And I was like, EF just threw that script in their face. And then the guy that lets the wheel go, Del Toro didn't respond initially, Benji. And I was like,
exactly.
Holy shit.
We've got Honoré, Carapaz. The chat has checked. It was Honoré. Then Carapaz in the wheel. Then the EF rider that lost the wheel might have been Cepeda. Then McNulty. Then Del Toro. That EF rider losing the wheel means that McNulty has to close it, which he can't. Then Del Toro comes past McNulty, trying to close the gap towards Carapaz. Carapaz, who has seen that the rest is on a gap, so is now moving by himself past Honoré. Can we talk about the fact that it's more than 15 kilometers to go on the hardest climb of this entire Giro d'Italia? And we've already got a mano-a-mano fight between Richard Carapaz, El Jaguar de Tulcan, and Isaac Del Toro. What's his nickname? Can we make a new one for him as well?
Torito. But that just means like little bull. Like, yeah. We'll
have a think about it.
We'll think about
Next
it. We'll workshop
Grand Tour.
it. Simon Yates is looking suspect here. He's looking suspect or he's being smart? Because if you do think rationally, do you want to do a 30-second explosive effort at the bottom of this climb responding to attacks? If you can avoid it, no. But if the group behind stalls, you're going to have to do it anyway. So Simon Yates eventually... He doesn't react. He sits with G's group, and then they stop. Kruiswijk comes back to that group. Carapaz, I don't really understand Carapaz here, Benji. Now, I think he rides a very strange climb in the phase here, where to me, Simon Yates is the key to Carapaz winning this Giro, because Simon Yates has Van Aert ahead. He is probably going to climb better on this long-ass climb than Del Toro. Why does he pace to keep Yates behind with Del Toro in the wheel? I would have, as soon as Del Toro was in the wheel, stop, and then Yates going is your ally, really.
I see that as a possibility. I agree with you there, but let's sketch a situation here. Yates was indeed behind. He's now trying to attack that second group because the tempo there stopped towards Carapaz and Del Toro. Carapaz pacing with Del Toro basically sitting in his wheel. We're not talking about them relaying here. We're talking about Carapaz pacing with Del Toro in the wheel, being chased by Simon Yates at this point in the race. I agree with you on one end, but I think I do have a counter argument. Is there a possibility that, because you're assuming that, okay, Del Toro is a climber that prefers one tempo the entire climb. If you start-stop as Carapaz, you might force him to continue to do punchy actions and therefore deteriorate his energy more than if you just do a one-pace climb, which in your assumption would fit Del Toro better. The other side of things is that Carapaz might look at it and think, okay, if I make it a long and hard climb from bottom to top by just setting my best possible tempo, he will benefit from some draft. That's a possibility. That's a certainty, actually. But on the opposite side of the coin, that's maybe more fatigue than doing the start-stop.
And I've changed my mind whilst you were that, Benji, and I've changed my mind. Carapaz wasn't going all out with Del Toro in the wheel because Yates gets across easily. And where do you want to have Del Toro? You want him away from his teammates. You don't want Micah back to set that pace, that steady pace. So I've changed my mind a bit. I understand Carapaz is trying to bring Del Toro out because what happens? Micah and Co, they're not going to pace behind. when Del Toro's up the road. They're not pacing to get back to him.
They've done that last week.
except the whole fucking Giro before this point. And then the gap will really go out, and unless someone bridges across. So I do understand what Carapaz was trying to do, and actually the situation we're describing begins to happen, Benji. Yates begins to stop-start attack. Carapaz goes as well. But here, Benji, Benji also just killed an insect with one hand. He's trying to, impressive. Dumb insect going on a white AirPods case where there's a high contrast and you can see it. If it had gone on your microphone stand, it would have been in. So, yeah. Carapaz here to me was still focused Yates. Like, he at what point on this climb, Benji, until right when it was too late, later, at what point was Carapaz making Yates Del Toro's problem to make Del Toro eat his plate first?
Because for me, it really starts becoming clear once Yates starts catching up and attacking. Because when Yates is in the group of three there, when he's there, and then Yates is the one that makes the first move again after that trio is together, it's Carapaz closing it instead of leaning on Del Toro. And that doesn't happen just once. Basically, first attack from Simon Yates, Carapaz jump closest to his wheel, Del Toro gradually closes. I do gotta tip my hat off to the smarts of Del Toro in this situation. That is the way to go if you are a one-pace climber. Shall we categorize it as that, for example?
And he's just bigger than these guys. So, like, if he's having to respond on 9-10% over and over, matching their burst, it's going to maybe hurt him more. And that's the mistake he made on stage 16 when Yates was giving it to him. He eventually cracked. And I thought Del Toro was riding a masterclass at this point. The team should never have set up the stage this way, but the way Del Toro was managing his effort was perfect because Carapaz was playing himself. Yep. Why would Del Toro do anything more? He's got his teammates behind he can wait for, and Carapaz is neutralizing Yates every time for him. At this point, he's playing it so cool. I was like, he is managing this perfectly.
So Yates attacks twice in the way we described it. Carapaz closes it every time. Del Toro gradually closes it. The next attack doesn't come from Simon Yates. It comes from Carapaz. And that's where Del Toro does follow. I like snap close the wheel of Carapaz. So the idea of Del Toro on this climb to me is, okay, I'm going to gradually close when Yates attacks and Carapaz closes him. Because then Carapaz is doing an effort to Simon Yates, so is unlikely to maybe counter Yates in the process. And there I have the time to maybe gradually close those two riders. If Carapaz himself attacks, then I need to snap close. And that's where Yates does the gradual close. Because Yates knows that, okay, Carapaz was pacing earlier with Del Toro and Neil, but I've come back once, so I can do my in-tempo gradually coming back. Because Simon Yates said it yesterday in the interview, he's not as explosive as Carapaz and Del Toro when it comes to their attacks. He benefits from not necessarily going into the red every time that attack happens. And I think that's why he also avoided it the first time around on this climb. I don't know. I never believed he was suspect there at the start of the climb when he wasn't with Carapaz and Del Toro. To me, it was a conscious decision to begin with.
Yeah, and this is where Del Toro's plan and I think what their strategy starts to come unstuck. It's very, very clear. Del Toro, they decided Simon Yates was no threat today.
Yeah.
Because why do you let Van Aert in the break with no UAE rider?
Or not the first priority in terms of threat.
Not the first priority, which is also true. The guy closest to you on GC and the guy who's dropped everybody and who's attacking and dropping Yates yesterday, Carapaz is the first priority. He's the guy with EF launching it at the bottom. But that single-minded focus never changes for Del Toro, from what I could see. And the problem is his teammates are not coming. So they're not... If he waits for it gets to a certain point that if he would ever wait for his teammates and there's more attacks, he has a problem. And then...
Yates attacks, again, twice. Yeah. The first one, Carapaz closes immediately, and Del Toro gradually closes again. But then the next Yates attack, there's something different. Simon Yates attacked, and Carapaz does not close. Carapaz does not close Simon Yates' attack, which means he's got a gap, and Del Toro stays on the wheel of Richard Carapaz. And this brings opportunities. If Simon Yates is up the road, Yates won't complain. This is a great opportunity. If two dogs fight for a bone, the cat might run away with it. I'm not sure that's the expression, but that's the one I just made. Nonetheless, the other option is, this might give an opportunity to Carapaz. He might think to himself, now what we've been hinting at quite a few times in the last 5 minutes, okay, if Simon Yates is up the road, I can lean on Del Toro to make this his problem before it's my problem. If he wants to win the Maglia Rosa, then he needs to make sure Simon Yates doesn't get out of hand. And then after his plate is done for, after I Carapaz, ate his plate out first, I can counter him later and benefit from him having done the work to close Simon Yates. That's the thought process there. But that doesn't happen because Derek G comes. He teleports to the group. He was behind a few times. He attacked the group that Yates was in initially and brought himself to the group of Del Toro and Carapaz here, and he starts pacing for them. Were you surprised by that?
No, and he's not pacing for them. G has one plan. I'm going to do Finestre at my pace as fast as possible because he's also a bigger rider compared to the small boys, and he wasn't particularly pacing for them. I think Derek G pacing ultimately benefited Simon Yates a lot because G is pacing slower than Yates, but he's not completely stalled. So he is pacing, it's like an illusion of someone controlling. And so then Del Toro and Carapaz get greedy. Del Toro still doesn't relay. He doesn't help Derek G. He doesn't take over when G flicks. And to me, this is where he loses me. Like, at some point when you're in the Maglia Rosa on the final mountain, with Yates up the road, it is your problem. And I don't know if he was at the limit. We don't know how he felt at that time. But if Derek G could pace, Del Toro also could have relayed. And that's where he loses me.
I agree in some sense, but to me, I lose him a little bit later on the climb because the gap right now, when G is pacing, is about 20 seconds. Simon Yates has 20 seconds on this group of G, Del Toro, and Carapaz. And that's where we maybe see the biggest attack on this entire climb, in my personal opinion. Carapaz pounces like El Jaguar de Tulucan on one side of the road. Del Toro has to sit down pretty quickly in his response to it, but once again, gradually tries to stay on the gap. This was a longer effort, a longer attack. Carapaz kept on accelerating after every corner. Eventually, Carapaz does make it back to Del Toro, but I want to talk about this for a second. This was ideal for Simon Yates. The fact that the gap was 20 seconds and they were not able to close that gap in that attack by Carapaz, that means that Carapaz and Del Toro just went into the red, while Simon Yates was able to ride at, he was also riding somewhat in the red on this climb, of course, but he was not necessarily at max heart rate at that moment. He can keep his tempo going, while they have to recover a bit right now, and they're still behind.
There was the moment, there was a couple of moments where Carapaz was almost at Yates. And then he decides he wants Del Toro to finish it off. And if you're Carapaz, you don't want to close down Yates with Del Toro in your wheel. You want to like attack across to him. But if you don't, like Benji said, if you don't actually get across, you have to recover. There's always a consequence on these long, it's a 1 hour climb. There's a consequence to surging like that. And you could even see Del Toro, when Carapaz would attack, Del Toro was like doing the mental, don't spike my watts, and I'll come back to him gradually. It was smart to ride it, to pace it that way. But this is all, as Benji said, Simon Yates. The gap goes to, I think...
It grows?
It grows to 25 seconds. We don't get a gap quickly. It's growing. And
by the
then...
way, we're 1/3 into the climb.
Yeah, there's a lot of climb left. We're wondering, where's Van Aert? Chris Harper, by the way, he drops Ver, and he's going solo to win this stage. He's got a gap of still 5 minutes. He's riding a strong pace on Finestre. I feel bad for Chris Harper, but it's an incredible win. Happy he won today, and that Jayco won.
We'll give him credit afterwards. We'll talk about GC first. After the stage and the GC stuff, we'll get to Chris Harper. He deserves the applauding. The one thing that I found both funny and silly at the same time were the rogue satellite rider gimmicks on the climb. Jacopo Mosca from Little Trek, from the breakaway, sees Simon Yates coming, starts riding for Simon Yates. Haha, funny. I enjoy that moment. Then the Bond does it as well for Carapaz and Del Toro. I'm sorry, but it was fun the first time around. It's not fun anymore the second time around. So I don't know why I enjoy it, but at the end of the day, it's funny because you don't even need your own teammates as satellite riders up the road because other teams are doing it for you.
And the gap is growing. Like Yates gets one, and Carapaz and Del Toro get one of these random guys. It's like he was in the break, and then they want their 5 seconds of fame. Yeah. Eventually, and this is the Giro right here, Carapaz cracks the shits with Del Toro. And the problem is, how does Carapaz ride? What's his style of riding? If you pull with him and you pull with full commitment, he will attack you from behind. What has Carapaz been doing to Del Toro for the last 25, 30 minutes on this climb? Attacking Del Toro and pulling and then letting the gap out to Simon Yates. Del Toro has the somewhat illusion of safety of Derek G to pace and set a rhythm just behind. Carapaz says to Del Toro, you need to relay. And Del Toro doesn't. And they literally surplus. And yeah, this was... but then Carapaz's bluff is called again, and he actually begins to... Del Toro was still kind of right in this moment because he waits 5 seconds, and then Carapaz's bluff is called, and he starts chasing Yates again.
This reminds me of when... Maybe... I don't know what classic it was, but when Remco Evenepoel is pulling, and there's someone in his wheel... and he asks them to relay, but he doesn't give them enough time to actually start relaying before he's already back at the front and relaying because he's frustrated and doesn't think the other person will take over. That's what it felt like here. Carapaz surpluses for 3 seconds and is then like, okay, I'll start riding again because my second place is riding away from me. You either go hard or you go home, you know? You go one way or you go the other. Either you keep pacing the entire time without the surplusing, and you try and focus on okay, I'm going to try and put fatigue by pacing this entire climb into Del Toro. That's one option. The other option is surplusing properly and forcing Del Toro to take that spot without blinking first. Because right now you're doing what's in the middle and it's not benefiting you. Your second place is riding away from you while you are pacing Del Toro.
Yeah, this was... The gaps from this moment start to get out of control. And what were you thinking, Benji? Because I was thinking, if Del Toro and Carapaz get over the top, I mean, eventually it's proven wrong, but if the gap is like 1:30, even 2 minutes, and Van Aert is already caught, Yates has a problem. But
I wasn't thinking about them coming over the top. I was thinking about one thing. There's this Belgian man, you mentioned him, Wout van Aert. He was in the breakaway all day. If Wout van Aert makes it to the top of this climb in front of Simon Yates, this Giro d'Italia is over, is what I thought from this point onwards. The gap was only 45 seconds from Yates to Carapaz and Del Toro, but reality is, Carapaz and Del Toro together will never pace the tempo that Wout van Aert can do on the flat segment for Sestriere. That is going to explode, especially when they've just shown for half an hour on the climb that they can't work together.
On 10%. So they're not going to work together on 10%. Now try to give a guy a draft on false flat. Yeah. Del Toro was like, I'm not losing this Giro to Carapaz. And at a certain point, it switches. And I think at some point when it went to 120, Del Toro had to start pulling. Like, you have to accept at some point, Carapaz might attack me, but I have to ride full to the top. And the way he was able to respond to Carapaz's multiple attacks, even on the gravel, he was still responding to attacks. He wasn't setting his full tempo, and he decided just to, almost he'd rather lose to Simon Yates than Carapaz. But yeah, the gaps, Benji, it goes to 2 minutes, I think, at one point on the climb. It was 2 minutes, and then the Harper gets over the top with like 4 minutes 50 to Yates. Carapaz has one bit, he does like a attack then pace on the end of the gravel. And thank God there was no, from what I could see, punctures on the gravel for these top GC guys. We don't know where Van Aert is.
Well, there's one moment I do want to mention.
Oh, that right-hander?
I don't know if it was the one right-hander, but there's a moment when the virtual Maglia Rosa switches, that moment, the virtual Maglia Rosa switches from the shoulders of Isaac Del Toro to Simon Yates. Before it gets to 2 minutes, Isaac Del Toro immediately goes from second position in the wheel of Carapaz to the front and starts pacing for like a minute. And then he eventually goes to the wheel of Carapaz again. I feel like his team probably said it. Come on, man, you're losing your jersey. Like, I don't know what they say in their fucking. I was gonna say AirPods, their radio, their AirPods.
I don't think they have AirPods.
I don't think so either. Their race radio. That's the word I was looking for. But that something must have switched in that moment when that virtual Maglia Rosa switch happened, because that's when Del Toro actually took the front for one of the first times on this climb. It didn't last too long, because at the end of the day, we can talk about tactics all we want, and we will, don't worry. But Isaac Del Toro was on the limit following Carapaz, and there's nothing else about it here. Yeah.
And they let Simon Yates ride. He got to ride 2/3 of this climb at his tempo, which is always going to be as fast as he... Simon Yates did this climb as fast as he could possibly have done it, because he didn't... There was the attack stop-start at the beginning, but then he's doing the whole thing his tempo. He doesn't have to worry about anyone in his wheel. He's got Van Aert ahead, and you also have to... Simon Yates does an incredible performance today. It's not just tactics. He also is riding away from guys riding as hard as they can. And this is a different climb to yesterday. Yesterday was where he got dropped by Carapaz, was the end of a sort of shallow 4% climb, explosive burst. This is a 1 hour effort on steep gradients, and with the gravel, it feels steeper. But Carapaz brings it down to 140. Carapaz still, he's like attacking, and Del Toro, I was like, does he have a flat? Because there were some gaps, but then he closes it. There's a right-hander. Harper came a cropper there and nearly came off his bike. It maybe has deep gravel and you can't turn into the hairpin. It's near the top. Yates goes over the top. Crucially, he has not caught Wout van Aert yet. We've not seen Van Aert. We don't know where, but he has not caught Wout van Aert yet. And that, again, doubly changes this stage.
Can we talk about this?
He must have done a solid climb, because Van Aert, actually, he could have done this with like an 8:30 gap, maybe.
A solid climb. I bet he was probably at the top a minute and a half, maybe a minute in front of Simon Yates, based on that descent. Even if it's half a minute, it's a crazy performance. You got to keep in mind, like, yes, Wout van Aert, absolute watts, amazing. Watt per kilo, it's much harder. He's a much heavier rider than a Simon Yates is. So he has to push a lot more weight up a climb, has to do a lot more absolute watts to be able to get himself up the climb at the same watt per kilo. So that is a ridiculous performance. This is, I haven't seen the numbers, but without a doubt, one of the best climbing performances of Wout van Aert I've seen in his entire career.
Exactly. To get over the top and to be, having that big a gap, he's come, Van Aert's been almost underrated after the Siena win. Like, he hasn't done the Hautacam pull, but that pull he did on stage 16, that was crucial to putting time into Del Toro. So he laid the foundations for Yates to attack afterwards. And today, incredible performance. He really is like a game changer in these stages. And the Giro's still not over at this point. There's a very technical descent. Harper runs a few corners wide, and then we're thinking, Simon Yates nearly crashes on a left-hander. He breaks a bit too much. You see him skid. He recorrects it. He's pushing it. He's not caught to Van Aert. Visma obviously have Van Aert wait for after the technical section. I think that was probably the correct... I don't think he would have gone faster than Yates on the very technical initial part of the Finestre descent. And this is where the stage... Del Toro can still win the Giro at this point, Benji. You don't know if Van Aert has an issue. You don't know if Yates if Yates is shit on Sestriere and Van Aert. I didn't believe either. The odds were hugely in Yates' favor. He has 1 minute 40. He has Van Aert to do the Valley. Del Toro and Carapaz aren't cooperating. But I did not expect Del Toro and Carapaz to completely put the brakes on straight away on the descent. That surprised me.
I'm not shocked by Carapaz. Carapaz comes to the top of Finestre and is in a situation where...
Why would he pull?
He's not going to win the Giro d'Italia anymore. So it's a question of, can I force Del Toro to do all the work and then try to counter him on Sestriere and maybe find the deficit I need to pass him in GC instead of Yates and still keep my second place? That's the mindset switch of Carapaz at the top of Finestre. But if we take a look at Del Toro, at the end of the day, yes, he should keep on pulling until the end of this race. Yes, if you stop pacing there, it's maybe... There's two reasons that could be coming to mind. He was at his physical limit the entire Finestre climb, and now he's reached his mental limit. That's, I think, what happened, and that's why I think he gave up. And I don't think there's a shame in that for a 21-year-old rider that rides his second Grand Tour and the first one as a leader. Yes, it's something he will need to work on for future Grand Tours, but there's no shame in that, mentally giving up after physically coming to your limits in the craziest stage of his entire career. It's the most important stage of his entire career.
The hardest climb he's ever done.
Yes, but on the opposite side, on paper, you'd say 100% he should keep riding all out. Yes, it could lose him a second. It could lose him even second place to Carapaz if he gets counter on Sestriere. But that's what trying to defend the Maglia Rosa is. Maybe you lose a second place to try to win a race. And that step he doesn't do here. And they give up. But well, Del Toro gives up on the Maglia Rosa here. And the gap explodes. It's not 2 minutes anymore. It's 3 minutes. I'm sorry, but I looked away for a second. I looked back at my screen. Mate, suddenly Yates was 5 minutes ahead of them. 5!
Yeah, the problem was that the help from behind from the UAE teammates wasn't coming quick enough. And Derek G, he proves what we were saying about his pacing. Derek G gets them on the flat, and he's not pulling. He was just doing his tempo on Finestre. But on the flat, he just sits in. And you literally, like, Del Toro and Carapaz don't turn a pedal in anger on the whole descent. Well, so you got Van Aert riding full. So, yeah, it was crazy, to be honest. To see the gap explode like that, it was like the Froome stage. The Froome Finesse, like this stage is delivered again, where you have these crazy gaps, bigger gaps, actually. In the end, bigger gaps than the Froome stage.
If yesterday someone told me that a certain rider might end up winning this Grand Tour by even, let's say, 3 minutes, I would have laughed at them for 20 minutes straight.
That's crazy. I thought it was going to come down to less than 30 seconds.
But to me, already from 5 kilometers from the top of Finestre, this Giro d'Italia was over. Once I realized that Wout van Aert was going to make it over the top in front of Simon Yates, I did not believe for a second. Outside of bad luck, which can always happen, outside of bad luck, this Giro was in the hands of Simon Yates, and he was riding to not just the virtual Maglia Rosa, but the real one on Sestriere.
Yep. And Chris Harper wins the stage. Alessandro Ver, I'm glad he holds on for second. He deserved that place. But yeah, Simon Yates, he says, bids adieu to Wout van Aert, who's ripped this gap apart. The gap is over 6 minutes, and Yates does the last 5 kilometers of Sestriere himself. Once it goes uphill, Micah begins pacing for Del Toro behind just to ride them in, I guess. Max Poole comes back with Pellizzari, Derek G, Caruso, McNulty are all there. And Simon Yates rides away to win, take the Maglia Rosa, the stage tomorrow, of course. He's in third on 1:57. Del Toro, 7 minutes 10. So a gap of 5 minutes and 13 seconds. It's a big gap. Del Toro sprints to the finish, actually puts 4 seconds into Carapaz. Simon Yates goes into the GC lead over Del Toro. He's on 3:56, so actually a big gap. Carapaz on 4:43, so their gap is more or less stable, and Derek G holds on to fourth. Caruso holds on to fifth, 7:32. Shout out to everybody. Pellizzari into sixth. Fantastic result for him on 9:28. Bernal on 7th, 12:42. Rubio 8th, 13:05. McNulty moves up 1 spot on 13:36 into 9th. Storer moves down, still top 10, 14:27.
I'm sorry, but there's something I do need to mention here. I saw quite a bit of criticism on Isaac Del Toro after the finish line, because after he sprint, he seems relatively happy. He's smiling. And yes, that's not necessarily the facial expressions you expect from a rider that just lost the Maglia Rosa on the second last stage of a Grand Tour. But you gotta think about the person he is for a second. He's a 21-year-old, first-time Grand Tour as the leader, Mexican rider. I can't even count the amount of Mexican riders I know on the palm of my hand. Raul Alcala won a stage, I think, of the Tour de France, maybe, in the 80s, 90s. I don't know for sure. That's the only Mexican rider that comes to mind with amazing performances in my head. It's insane for a Mexican rider of 21 years old to come to the Giro d'Italia without the GC ambitions necessarily from the start publicly, and to deliver a podium in GC at the end of the race. Yes, I'm being very defensive of Isaac Del Toro here, but this guy's 21-year-old and just podiumed the Giro. That's Pogacar behavior.
Well,
I don't like the comparison as rider type, but that palmarès-wise, 2019 Pogacar behavior.
Vuelta Pogacar, where Pogacar he won 3 stages. Del Toro could have won 3 stages, no problem.
Yes,
easily. And the shocking thing for me, get to Yates in a second, but is that Del Toro could have won this Giro. I thought Del Toro was going to get hard dropped on Finestre. He climbed Finestre way better than I expected relative to Carapaz.
Yes.
And when we do the post-mortem, Benji, on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to look back at the stages where Simon Yates was behind and UAE chased Isaac Del Toro ahead.
Yes.
He could have won this Giro.
He could have won this Giro, but I am gonna, maybe I'll save it for the post-mortem, but I'll hint it a little bit. I do feel like I have some arguments to defend UAE in this scenario, but we'll get to that in our podcast after this Giro d'Italia.
So 2018, Simon Yates, he's been destroying everybody in the Giro d'Italia. He's won multiple stages. He's got a very handy lead in the Giro. He goes into the Finestre stage on stage 19 with a lead of 3 minutes 22 on Froome, and he's outclimbing Dumoulin, who's 30 seconds behind him with no time trials left. And on stage 19, he loses everything. He loses 38 minutes 50. On this stage, on this climb, Simon Yates lost nearly 40 minutes.
Really?
In 2018, yeah.
I thought it was 26. I've been joking about 26 minutes for a month now.
38.50. And
ridiculous.
He completely collapsed, and today he does the opposite. He does it to the others and wins the Giro d'Italia, banishing the demons on Finestre. He was not just an underdog before the race. Like he was not really considered when you think of Roglic, Ayuso, etc. And then even after yesterday, after the second rest day, he was under the radar the whole time, and he was waiting for this stage. And he wins the Giro.
Absolute poetry. The Finestre in 2018 versus the Finestre now. But also just in general, I don't have that many stages in my history of watching cycling where I'm shell-shocked after I've watched it. This is one of those stages. I can maybe think of 7 or something, and that's a lot. Maybe it's even more 5. Planche de Belfia is one of them. Out of personal desire, the Nibali Cobble stage is one of them, but that's more severely biased towards Vincenzo Nibali back in the day. But there's only a couple of stages where for the first 10 minutes after I've watched the race, I'm sitting at my desk and staring at a wall and just being shell-shocked. For the last half an hour of this race, I felt like I've just seen a plot twist in a TV show where I'm shocked by the conclusion and I want to start watching reaction videos from people on YouTube. That's how I felt after watching this stage.
Exactly. You want to read everything. Like you want to see all the interviews. What are the riders saying? What are riders not at the race saying? It's one of these. We're very fortunate to have them, Benji. We maybe didn't have a stage like this last year, but this reminds me of that Planche de Belfie where we both sit down to do the podcast and we're like, holy shit, what just happened? And
makes a grown man cry, my friend. This is ciclismo.
No need for tears. Well, no, it was because this is why we do it, Benji. We cover a race for 3 weeks, not just this race, all the lead-up races, Tirreno, Paris-Nice. Cycling because it can deliver. The stakes are so high. There's no Giro till next year. They've just ridden for 3 weeks and they're separated by less than 90 seconds, the 3 riders. And it can all go up in smoke or be crazy and in just one climb.
And it's also like, if you know me personally, for the last couple of years in cycling, I don't necessarily have a favorite rider that I root for. I want to be entertained from start to finish. And yes, there were stages in the Giro d'Italia that were boring, that didn't deliver. Yesterday was one of them in my personal opinion, but today 100% delivered. And the finale of a Grand Tour is super vital, so important for my pleasure of that Grand Tour. So I will remember this Giro stage for a long time, in the same way that I remember Vincenzo Nibali's Giro victory in 2016. Maybe the Grand Tour itself wasn't as crazy as the 2016 version because I feel nostalgic towards that, but today's stage definitely overperformed compared to my expectations, and I had high expectations.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw EF launch, I mean, I had high expectations too, but when we saw EF launch it, we knew we were going to have a big battle, and we got that, and credits to all the riders involved. Carapaz, Del Toro, Yates, all the riders up the road.
Yeah.
It was a crazy stage.
Wout van Aert, MVP.
Yeah, Van Aert, yeah, does it again. He's like
the kingmaker.
In the year where people say, what's wrong with Wout van Aert? He's instrumental he wins the stage of the Giro and lead up for Colle, and then he's instrumental in winning GC. So
yeah, epic.
I don't know what else to say.
Absolutely epic stage. I don't know. It's
Brandon McNally's still in his top 10, so it was all worth it, right?
We'll talk about it in the post-mortem as well. The fact that Simon Yates has now won 2 Grand Tours. That's crazy in his career. One a Vuelta, one a Giro d'Italia. Tour de France is left, so I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Just go on, go straight to altitude, just win this year.
Did we talk about Harper enough?
No, we should give credits to Chris Harper. He was obviously a teammate of Simon Yates at Jayco the last couple of years. I think Chris Harper may have even been in that Col de la Loze breakaway in 23, being a tug buddy for Simon Yates. He was like he was first right-hand man in the mountains, actually. He's a absolutely excellent climber. GC, I don't think he doesn't seem made for GC, but in the breaks, when he's on his day, he's incredibly strong. And it's the biggest win of his career by far. He's only won he hasn't, fuck me. Wow, Chris Harper really doesn't win. Because I always see Chris Harper, I'm like, yeah, Chris Harper's like class climber. Benji, he hasn't won a race since 2019, a Tour of Japan win, when he was on Bridge Lane, the Australian continental team.
That's crazy. He's not won that much in his career, and he's
never
actually
won
a really
in
good
Europe.
rider. He was super strong on the gravel stage, super strong on multiple breakaway stages. Was not the strongest in the breakaway stage up till now, but to see him able to deliver this makes me happy. He's a nice guy in person. I was able to speak to him in Albania at the start of the Giro, and he spoke about his ambitions for this race. I think winning one of the Queen stages of this Giro will certainly live up to his expectations. And yes, the GC action of the day will overshadow the stage win of Chris Harper, but cycling fans will know that Chris Harper won the Colle del Finestre stage in 2025. And I think that's not the only thing he'll win in his career, because with this climbing level, you can win Grand Tour stages in the Tour and the Vuelta as well, if they allow breakaways to win the Tour.
Yeah, Chris Harper, I mean, the Vuelta probably is what he'll do. But yeah, class performance from him today. And Jayco, they've had a good Giro. They didn't come here with a sprinter, but they made the most of it with I guess they just brought like 7 stage hunters.
Yeah.
And then a couple weren't good. Zana and Bowman got sick. And then Plapp and Harper were good. And in the end, you still win stages.
Exactly. And actually, I'm going to self-promo for a bit. On my YouTube channel, Benji Nelson, on Monday, I'll do my usual Grand Tour team reviews, where I basically tier list every team in a Grand Tour. Sorry for hijacking the podcast, my friend, but it's going to be on YouTube on Monday, and I reckon it's going to be fun to rate Jayco after this Grand Tour as well, and some of the other teams, like Very was the first time I saw Arkea in this race.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for some of these teams. Like, it's when the breakaway goes, it's such a brutal climb, and that's a great performance from Vera. And yeah, for Groupama, they also were very active, but they just didn't have the riders. They had no sprinter, and Gadu was out, so feel bad for them. But yeah, what a stage, Benji. I'm not sure if we've missed anything. I think I'll just do some quick interviews that I've seen. Carapaz said, he was quite critical of Del Toro. He said, let me get it. La Flamme Rouge got it. Carapaz. Del Toro lost the Giro. He didn't know to race well. The smartest rider won. Del Toro said, Carapaz told me he wasn't going to help me because I didn't help him when we were 20 seconds behind. Del Toro said, I told him, okay, if I've already lost first place, I'm not going to lose second. I think Del Toro switched to defending second way too quick, Benji. When Van Aert was caught by Yates, the virtual lead for Simon Yates on GC to Del Toro was under 30 seconds.
I would have rather seen him fight and lose the second place and come third in this race than giving up as quickly as this. But I can understand from a position of a guy that that doesn't come from the biggest cycling country in the world, that can deliver the biggest Grand Tour result of, into my memory, any Mexican ever at the age of 21, that he does that quicker. And also because he might not have ever been in this situation where it's the highest stake race he's ever done. Physically, he's completely at his limit, and mentally, he went over his limit. And I think that's where it went wrong. And I won't blame this Mexican 21-year-old that has a bright future ahead for this. But I do hope that in the future, in like 5 years, when he's fighting for a victory in a Grand Tour in a yellow jersey or something on stage 20 of the Tour de France, that he's willing to lose his second place to try and win the race.
Exactly. What if he overextends? Derek G was right there. Derek G's right there. He's not crumbling. What if he loses podium is probably what he's thinking. If I go completely over my limit, Carapaz flicks me, which he would do, which I guess Carapaz is going to attack him again, which he did later. So I can sort of understand it. And yeah, I feel a bit sorry for Del Toro, actually. I feel like he got sold by the team the last 2 weeks.
We'll get to that.
They never tried to maximize his time gain on stage that suited him.
We'll get to that in the post-mortem podcast.
Post-mortem
podcast.
Our
full Giro d'Italia recap, which comes out on?
Monday or Tuesday. Monday or Tuesday we'll do it.
Okay, deal.
But yeah, hope you enjoyed this podcast. Go check out the bicycle link down below. And what do you mean tomorrow? Luke is reminding us.
Luke is reminding us to preview stage 21 of this Giro.
Stage 21.
I don't care,
right.
bro. It's going to be a sprint.
I don't give a fuck. Okay, fine, Luke. 143 kilometers in Rome to do circuits of Rome. I don't know if I think this is the stage where Ackerman's been decent. It's like an uphill sprint. There's some bonus seconds, but they shouldn't matter. It can be a bit slippery in Rome. I don't know what the weather is. So, yeah, I think maybe Yates still has to get through the stage, of course. But it's going to be a sprint. The sprinters have had very thin pickings this Giro d'Italia so far. They have to make this one happen, and I'm going with Caden Groves to win.
You're going for Caden Groves. I'm going for Olaf Koy, and Simon Yates is going to lead him out.
I think Van Aert's going to get a yellow card because he's hungover, and he's going to accidentally deviate into Koy, and then Groves will come through the other side and win.
Yeah, okay. Simon Yates will lead out Olaf Koy in the Maglia Rosa. Never going to happen.
Simon Yates ain't doing that Geraint Thomas impression.
I don't think so either. But it's a funny thing to think about.
He better not do it. He better not do it. Unless it's under 3Ks to go.
Anyway, it's time for you to start slurping the champagne off your keyboard.
Yeah, my laptop's crucified. It's done. It's crucified. I think I just dumped a whole load of stuff over it. Okay, thanks for listening as always. Crazy stage. Thanks for being with us all through the Giro, and we'll see you with the Rome recap tomorrow. Ciao, ciao, ciao.